From spooky legends past, down through generations, to haunted locations that hold a ghostly past. Come one, come all, come finders and seekers. Hear the creepy side of NEPA.
Welcome to the Creepy Side of NEPA. I am Dan Kozlowski. Here we are on our final episode of the Halloween season. I hope everyone is enjoying the season so far. As we approach Halloween, I just want everyone to remember the Creepy Side of NEPA will continue the rest of the year. After the Halloween season, we'll return back to our monthly episode schedule. And I know I mentioned this in the beginning of our last episode. If you have a story you would like to share on an upcoming episode of the Creepy Side of NEPA, I'm giving all of our listeners the opportunity to tell their own story. I would like to turn the mic around and let our listeners tell the story. If you have a story, please email us at ghost@wnep.com. Also remember, if you haven't already, please like, subscribe, or follow the Creepy Side of NEPA on whichever podcast platform that you're listening to us on. Tonight's guest on the Creepy Side is Maxim Furek. Maxim is a paranormal author and author of Coal Region HooDoo, Paranormal Tales from Inside the Pit. Maxim, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you, Dan. Yeah, I'm looking forward to having a nice conversation about Coal Region HooDoo and the paranormal aspects of our region.
Max, I'm glad you could finally make it onto the show.
Yeah, I know. I think we met last year, it was 2022 at the Scranton Paranormal Conference.
Yes, at the Culture Center, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So that was great. So we've been planning this moment for a long time.
Yes,
so
we have been. So what got you into the paranormal?
Well, I'll tell you what, it was a fluke. It was a crazy fluke. I'm a former rock journalist, and my book, Somebody Else's Dream, I wrote that to celebrate the 50-year anniversary of the song Timothy. And as your listeners probably know, Timothy was the highest charting song of any regional rock band. So Timothy reached number 17 in 1971. It was recorded by the Boys from the Scranton, Wilkes-Barre area. But a lot of people thought that the song Timothy, which was about cannibalism, was actually about the Sheppton Mine disaster of 1963. Now, in 63, this is a true story, 3 guys were entombed for 2 weeks, over 300 feet underneath the ground, and only 2 came out. And when they rescued the 2 miners, the townspeople wanted to know what happened to the third miner, what happened to your mate. And there were horrible allegations that he was cannibalized, and they were horrible. They were unsubstantiated, they were grotesque, but right. That rumor, that mystique never went away. But the song Timothy, a lot of the people, including Jerry Ludzik from the Boys, felt that Rupert Holmes, the Pina Colada man who wrote Timothy, they felt that that the song Timothy was actually based on what happened in Sheppton, Pennsylvania in 63. So as I was investigating Sheppton, I discovered a treasure trove of paranormal occurrences. And that led me into writing a book about Sheppton, and then Coal Region HooDoo, and now my latest book that's coming out hopefully this month, The Flying Saucer Esoteric. So I have stumbled and fell into the paranormal, but I found a demographic group, and I found just a wonderful community, and so I think I'm going to stay with this genre for a while.
Oh, there's definitely no shortage of stories out there. I've noticed that since I started this show. I thought maybe we'll do a few episodes around Halloween time. This was back in 2019, and we haven't stopped since.
Yeah, and one other thing, too, a lot of people say, how did you get involved in the paranormal? Why did you write all these books on the paranormal? And part of this, I think, was, this is sort of like I'm coming from left field here, but I think it was anger and frustration. And by that, what I mean is when you go into these bookstores or libraries and look in the paranormal section, and very few books are written about our region, about the Coal region. They're written about Lancaster and hex signs and white witches and, all of that. They're written about Gettysburg and all the lives that were lost and all the trapped spirits, but very few, or very few are written about the Coal Region, and I contend that our backyard, the Coal Region, has more stories to tell, than Lancaster and Gettysburg. So I want to do for the Pennsylvania Coal Region what Stephen King did for the state of Maine. I want to go and talk about our paranormal aspects and the stories, and I want to do it in a scientific and literary manner. So that's what I'm trying to do, and I think that's what I did with Coal Region HooDoo.
Now, when we talk about the Coal Region, what region does your book really cover?
Well, first of all, it's Pennsylvania-centric, so I talk about the entire state of Pennsylvania. But I do start off in northeastern Pennsylvania's Coal Region. I talk about Sheppton, of course, and I go a little bit further and deeper with the Sheppton narrative. I talk about Centralia, the cursed town of Centralia. I talk about Nick Adams, the cursed rebel who was from Berwick. Dr. Frederick Santee from Walpolepan, who was a white witch, who was noted as one of the foremost abstract thinkers of the 20th century. And I talk about a guy that nobody has ever heard about, but he's infamous in the annals of ufology, and that's Richard Sharp Shaver, born in Berwick, Pennsylvania, same as me, but only he was born in 1907. So I have a chapter about Richard Sharp Shaver.
Yeah, as I say, I never heard of that name before.
Yeah, Richard Sharp Shaver was big in the 1940s. He started to write articles for Amazing Stories, and Ray Palmer, Rapp, R-A-P, took his stories and he presented them as the truth, as being accurate and truthful and realistic. Richard Sharp Shaver claimed that he was abducted and held prisoner by these evil Deros. They were these evil creatures that kept him underground and tortured him. And they had, and so Ray Palmer published these stories in Amazing Stories, the pulps, which were big back in the 40s.
Right.
It became a diversion during World War II. It gave people something else to focus on other than, Adolf Hitler. And there were Shaver mystery groups where people would get together and talk about the Shaver mystery. But they were called Ray Palmer put it out there as the Shaver mystery. But what happened was the FBI in 1947 investigated Richard Sharp Shaver and Ray Palmer, and they investigated these guys because they claimed they were triggering the UFO hysteria. And remember, with 1947, we had Kenneth Arnold, who saw the 9 flying discs there by Mount Rainier, and he said he described them as being flying discs, but the news reporter called them flying saucers. So flying saucers became part of our lexicon.
That's just what stuck. Yep.
Exactly. So that's what it is. But Richard Sharp Shaver from Berwick was being investigated by the FBI for creating this UFO hullabaloo. So that's pretty crazy.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting. Never heard of his name before.
Yeah, Richard Sharp Shaver. Yeah, very interesting guy. And and I had the pleasure of doing a couple of presentations about Richard Sharp Shaver at for the Berwick Historical Society, and they had a haunted Jackson thing right around Halloween. So I was able to.
We just had Jennifer on the show from the Historical Society, our last episode.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, Jen Nardi. Yeah,
yep.
and
she was done back in July.
Yes, and she spoke kindly of you. So very, very good. Yeah,
that's good to hear.
Yeah, well, we think you're doing a wonderful job, and I think more people need to go and talk about things like this before this legacy goes away. And again, the Coal Region has a wonderful and a rich history of the paranormal and the supernatural. And when the immigrants came over, not only from Wales and from Ireland, but also from Slovakia and from Poland, they brought with them all these stories and all the superstitions. They brought their religion with them. They brought their religion and their superstition. So that stuck. So that's pretty interesting.
That's something you don't want to lose.
Exactly. I don't think so. And programs like yours, and I think books like mine ensure that, that at least the story is going to be around for a while,
sure.
For other generations.
When you're doing your research to write your book, what are some of your favorite stories that you came across? Well,
first of all, this is 2023 is 80th anniversary of the Philadelphia experiment. And that took place in 1943. And the story, and this is interesting because during World War II, there were all kinds of experiments going on, like the Manhattan Project, like Enrico Fermi, with his stacks of lumber and the plutonium rods. He had a makeshift laboratory underneath the gymnasium there at the University of Chicago, and he wanted to see if he could go and trigger a chemical fusion, a reaction, and this was part of that Manhattan Project. Everybody had their little task to do, but at the same time, there was a thing called the Philadelphia experiment, which might have been a legitimate experiment that went wrong. And what happened was, according to the Philadelphia experiment, a ship, the USS Eldridge, a destroyer escort, was teleported from Philadelphia to Norfolk and back, and people died and people were fused in the bulkheads and everything else. What I did was I heard about this guy from Derry, New Hampshire, Fred Tracy, and Fred Tracy claimed that he had a specific personal information about Admiral Forrestal, about the Philadelphia experiment, and all this other interesting stuff. So I called him a couple times. We had a correspondence, and then I drove up to Derry, New Hampshire, and interviewed Fred Tracy. And Fred's in my book, Coal Region HooDoo. I have a chapter on the Philadelphia experiment. Mm-hmm. Again, Pennsylvania centric. And if you believe that art imitates life, in the book, I start off with Night of the Living Dead, which was the movie that was made in Butler City or Butler County in Evans City, Pennsylvania, north of Pittsburgh, and also The Blob, based on a true story, and also the Philadelphia experiment that we believe was based on actual government experimentation. Of course, with the government, there's a lot of denial. There's a lot of cover-up. And a good example, with the Philadelphia experiment, it was hard for me to get information from the government. I did get letters from them, saying that this was just a practical joke that went wild. But by the same token, in 1965, we had the Kecksburg incident, and that's where a UFO flew over western Pennsylvania and landed outside of Kecksburg, Pennsylvania. And again, we don't know if it was a UFO or if it was our satellite or maybe a Soviet satellite. Right. But the interesting thing is that all of these researchers like Stan Gordon, who tried to go through the Freedom of Information Act to get information about what happened in 1965 in Kecksburg, Pennsylvania, what they get is they get documents that are either lost, they can't retrieve them, or documents that have been redacted. They're all blacked out. So what we're getting is something that is just totally useless. Even for whatever happened in 65 in Kecksburg, the government isn't being straightforward. They're not coming clean and telling us what they know. So, again, government denial and cover up. There's no other way to look at it. And there's been numerous people who have tried to get information about Kecksburg, and they just run into stone walls. So, but again, that is Kecksburg is the Pennsylvania Roswell. The same thing happened in Kecksburg that's happened in Roswell. The thing crashed. The military came in. They surrounded the place. They chased people away. The military trucks came in the dead of night, put things on the truck, covered them with tarps, and took off and went to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. And again, we never saw these objects or heard about them again because of this, what I believe was a massive coordinated cover-up.
Very interesting. I've heard about that incident a few times with various guests we had on over the past few years.
Yeah, and again, I have a chapter on Kecksburg in Coal Region HooDoo because it deserves to be there.
Sure,
it's part of our part of our Pennsylvania legacy. But, when you take a look at Pennsylvania and the weirdness, the paranormal, it's pretty incredible. I mean, we have a lot of stuff. For example, I have 2 chapters on Bigfoot and 2 chapters on UFOs, or UAPs, as the Pentagon likes to call them. And that's because Pennsylvania allegedly ranks number 3 in Bigfoot sightings after Washington State and California State.
Which I find pretty amazing.
Yeah, so do I. When I first heard it, I said, wow. But a lot of these take place in the Chestnut Ridge, and that's the other coal region, the soft coal. That's in western Pennsylvania. And there's 4 counties out there: Fayette, Westmoreland, I'm trying to think the other 2, but there's Indiana. But there's 4 counties called Chestnut Ridge, just outside of Pittsburgh. It's west of Pittsburgh, 100-mile stretch that goes down to West Virginia, and this is where we see the most Bigfoot sightings. But let me continue with this. Mm-hmm. Not only do we see Bigfoot, but we also see Bigfoot along with UFOs. Bigfoot and UFOs together. Now, when I first heard this, I thought, this is just ridiculous. This is just like stupid, and just I don't believe it. But it's been documented, countless times. And I gotta mention my buddy Stan Gordon. Stan's from Westmoreland County.
Yep, we had him on the show also just maybe 3-4 months ago. We had him right around the springtime, I believe.
Yeah. And Stan's the man. I mean, he's the guy that's written books about Kecksburg. He was there at the time, investigated it. He made documentaries, books. I mean, he's he's our go-to guy. But here's the thing. Whenever people call the state, especially in western Pennsylvania, whenever they call the state police and say, look, I have a Bigfoot sighting or a UFO sighting that I want to report, they say, call Stan Gordon. And so they give him Stan's number, and Stan will document this information. A good example, 2 months ago, my neighbor, who is a common sense guy, he's his feet on the ground, he's not crazy, he's a professional, he's a lab technician, and we went out to dinner, and he told me that he saw 2 Bigfoot creatures here in Luzerne County. And I don't want to go and give the exact location because, I don't want a million people coming down here. But he saw 2 of them. The black Bigfoot was larger, and then there was a cinnamon one that was smaller. And as he saw, he was in his car, and they were by the tree line. So they stopped, they turned around and looked at him. And just like they were curious, not afraid or anything. And then they turned and started to walk towards the tree line. And I asked him all these questions, and he said they walked like humans. They weren't bear. They were Bigfoot creatures. They weren't people in costumes. But what I did was I put Stan Gordon in touch with my neighbor, and also Tim Renner. And Tim's the other one. And if you haven't had Tim on your show, you should. Tim's the other one who's written countless books about UFOs. And Tim's a great guy.
No, we haven't had him on the show yet.
Yeah, I'll definitely give you his contact information. But anyway, I gave Tim Renner as well my neighbor's contact information, so they could go and contact him and get his description again. But again, this came out of the blue.
Right.
I wasn't asking. We weren't talking about Bigfoot. We weren't talking about anything weird or paranormal. But my neighbor just out of the blue said, yeah, I saw 2 Bigfoot. So my wife went up to the area several times looking for prints, looking for Bigfoot, and couldn't find anything. But we went back there on the trail line, and there were some trails there from utility workers, but I couldn't find anything else. So, but Pennsylvania, number 3. So,
and the one thing I found interesting, and this is going back when I first started the show, I had a Bigfoot investigator on. I don't remember his name off the top of my head, but he was saying that Bigfoots are known to be seen around, and now when you just mentioned the utility trails, known to be seen around power lines.
Yeah.
And he said he wasn't sure if they're attracted to them or to using them as like directional way of moving, but he said they're always seen or tend to be seen around power lines.
Yeah. First of all, I lump Bigfoot and UFOs together. I think they're a similar phenomenon. And the reason I say that is that we've had plenty of time to find dead bodies, to find the carcasses of Bigfoot or to find the remnants of crashed UFOs. And we haven't.
Right.
So if there's no flesh and blood, if there's no nuts and bolts, then where does that leave us? And so I think there has to be another theory, another reason. And I pretty much look at that interdimensional theory. Einstein talked about, the space-time continuum. There's holes or bridges in the space-time continuum that could allow us to go through that, allow other people, other planets, people from other planets to go through that space-time continuum just in seconds rather than, millions of light years. So I'm thinking, again, this isn't my idea, but Einstein came up with that wormhole theory. People like John Keel, Jacques Vallée, numerous people talk about this interdimensional theory that just maybe Bigfoot and UFOs might zigzag, might shapeshift in and out of these parallel dimensions that we see them and we don't. They use a term called bilocation, where they have people have sighted Bigfoot and they're in front of them, and then all of a sudden they're behind them. So we've heard that bilocation. And what's interesting too, again, I mean, just because this, it's like connect the dots. But I was listening to or reading something about, I think it was about Padre Pio, who seemed to have been in a trance. He was at a opera or something, and he seemed to have fallen asleep. But at the same time, they saw Padre Pio at another place, and they considered that this was an example of bilocation, where he was at two places at the same time. So again, I don't know, but
right, yeah, there's a lot out there. It just seems like we just don't know enough of.
Well, yeah, I think that there's other laws, scientific laws that can prove some of the stuff. I consider myself a scientist. I'm a student of the occult, and in Coal Region HooDoo, I try to take aspects of the paranormal and the spiritual, and I put them closer into the scientific realm. And by spiritual, I was a little reluctant to do this, but I thought I'm going to go for it. But I have chapters on Roman Catholic mysticism. I talk about St. Teresa of Avila, a 14th century Spanish mystic who claimed that through prayer and meditation, we can reach states of ecstasy and rapture and flight of the soul. And flight of the soul is an out-of-body experience. That was experienced by the two rescued miners in Sheppton. And the one guy was a devout Catholic, or devout Roman Catholic, and I believe through his prayer and meditation, he was able to go and get into the state of this out-of-body experience, where they claim they were up above the pit where they were trapped, and they could look down and see the rescue team. I mean, thousands of people that were working there. The rescue team, the Salvation Army, the National Guard, the paparazzi, thousands of people in Sheppton, Pennsylvania in 1963. But I included St. Teresa of Avila in my in Coal Region HooDoo because of the connection to Sheppton. And also Pope John the 23rd. In Sheppton, the miners claimed that they saw Pope John the 23rd with them in the mine for those 2 weeks. And they claimed that he saved their lives. The interesting thing is that Pope John the 23rd died in June of 1963. Sheppton took place in August of 1963. So in all three of his purported miracles, they all took place after he had died. And I remember I was at a book signing.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
I know it is, yeah. And again, Pope John the 23rd was canonized in 2014. Again, you're canonized because because people like you and I would look at this person and say, this is a holy man, a holy person, demonstrated by good works and by kindness and by faith and piety and devotion and all that. The interesting thing, in 2014, Pope Francis decided that he would have a dual canonization. So Pope John the 23rd, the guy that's in my Sheppton book, he was canonized, but also Pope John Paul II. Now, Pope John Paul II's claim to fame was that he was a renowned exorcist. And not only that, but Pope John Paul II had a college of exorcism. He believed that evil exists, that the devil exists, that the devil wants us to believe that he or she is just a myth. But Pope John Paul II had this school, this college of exorcism, where priests from over 132 countries came to learn the ancient rite of exorcism. Again, with and I'm going to be talking about this at the West Pittston Library, talking about the Smurl Haunting. But during that,
that was another question I was going to bring up with you, because remember you were talking about that on the phone with me, and that's one story I always hear bits and pieces of, but you never hear too much about.
Yeah, well, the thing of this, Fred Tracy was somebody that I knew personally, and got his narrative about the Philadelphia experiment in Coal Region HooDoo. The other was Ed and Lorraine Warren. And Ed and Lorraine Warren were on a 15-city book tour promoting The Haunted, which was the story about the Smurl Haunting. Mm-hmm. It was written by Robert Curran. He was from the Sunday Independent, now defunct. I used to work with that paper as well. And also Ed and Lorraine Warren and Jack and Janet Smurl. All 5 of those people contributed to this book. But anyway, they were in Jim Thorpe in 1988. I got permission to go there and interview them. So I took these wonderful pictures of them that the Warren Museum, their godson or nephew, is using my pictures there. I mean,
that's pretty neat. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but anyway, I was able to go and, hang out with them, interview them, and stay in touch with them over the years. I would call them up and ask them questions about the Smurl Haunting, about demonology, about demonic possession, about how he fought them off. And they were very, very kind people. They were very nice to me. Lorraine had a pet rooster, and when I would call them up, I could hear the rooster
in the background.
Yeah. But they were very nice, very down to earth. And I'm sure your listeners know that Ed and Lorraine Warren are responsible for the Conjuring franchise, which is Conjuring 1, Conjuring 2, Conjuring 3, The Devil Made Me Do It. The last one I just saw was The Nun 2. Before that, I saw Insidious, The Red Door. I see them all. But 9 motion pictures that brought in $2.1 billion. And the thing about that is that there's people like me that love to be scared, that love to go to these motion pictures. But again, Ed and Lorraine Warren, they were the ones that inspired the Conjuring franchise. And it's just amazing. But I mean, I look back and think I was so fortunate that I knew them. I mean, they're infamous. They were Roman Catholic demonologists from I think it was Monroe, Connecticut, and just very nice people. And so, there's a number of people that I personally knew that added to the narrative and added to the what I put in Coal Region HooDoo. So
that is saying something right there about the Smurl Haunting in West Pittston, that they actually came to investigate that.
Yeah, they did. They mentored Jack and Janet Smurl. They got them on a television program in Philadelphia, but what they did was Jack and Janet stayed behind a screen. So they talked about, the horrible things that happened. For example, Jack was raped by a succubus, a demon in female form, and he talked about that. But when they were on the TV program, they spoke behind a screen. But Ed and Lorraine Warren walked them through this. They thought that it might be good to go public because they wanted the church to get behind this thing and bring in their might and bring in their exorcist. Mm-hmm. And at first, the local church was reluctant, and they wouldn't do this. But then, because of the Ed and Lorraine Warren, they were able to get a priest from, I believe it was New York State, who came down. And he tried, but he wasn't able to go and get the job done. So they finally got Father Alphonse Trebolt, again, another one from New York State, and it took him 4 times to do these exorcisms, but he finally was able to cleanse the house. But by demonic possession and poltergeist activity, what it was at their house there in West Pittston, they would hear grunting sounds. They would have smell horrible odors. There would be profanities etched onto the mirrors, the fog mirrors. Jack was raped by a demon. His wife Janet was almost raped several times by a demon. The interesting thing is that their German Shepherd dog was levitated and thrown across the room. So you could either say, again, we're left with theories, but how did that happen? Well, if it did happen, how did it happen? Well, it was either the demonic possession, or some people believe that maybe it was the daughter Dawn Smurl. We talk about these the PSI power. Young adolescents, especially women, have this power that. And Stephen King talked about this in Carrie and Firestarter. He made a career out of that. These young adolescent women who have untapped, innate, maybe uncontrollable powers. And one theory is that it was actually Dawn Schmerl that lifted up that German Shepherd and flung the family dog.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
Yeah, I know. And Dawn, if you're listening, I mean, I'm sorry, but anyways, but that's one theory, and a lot of and evidently these young people, especially young women, have some sort of energy that these colleges that look at psi power and clairvoyance and all this, telepathy and all this. I mean, they study this and they believe that this is an actual, truthful variable. So anyway, maybe it did hit back home. But anyway, the Smurl thing, the book came out. The book was a big success. Fox TV had a made-for-TV documentary about the Smurl Haunting. And then eventually the Smurls left West Pittston and went other places. But, I believe in the rule of 90, not 100%, but 90. 30% are going to believe that it actually happened. 30% are going to say, nope, never happened. And then 30% are going to be on the fence, on the bias. They're the independent voters.
That's probably a good way of looking at it there.
Yeah, I think so. And even when I'm going to be at the West Pittston Library, I'm sure that I think most of the people there are going to be the true believers. They want to hear more information, but I think there's going to be a lot of doubters there. And even, I remember when I read everything I could about the Smurl Haunting, and some of the people were saying that, Janet Smurl was going to the library and reading books on the occult. Well, you know what? I think if you were traumatized, if you had PTSD, if you had been sexually assaulted, if you were addicted to substances, wouldn't you go and try to a library or someplace and try to get self-help books and try to learn as much as you could about that thing, that demon that you were dealing with? So, that's what she did. And it wasn't that she was so knowledgeable about the occult and demons, because she wasn't. She was just caught up in the trauma and the horrible trauma. I read the book. I'm actually rereading the book, and but it goes along with what Ed and Lorraine Warren had told me, and it also goes along with what's in Coal Region HooDoo.
And I know when you're talking about the 90% rule that you came up with, I noticed when you're talking to just about anybody, just about everybody out there has some kind of story that happened to them in their past that they can't explain. Right.
Yeah. It's interesting. People come up to me, and again, I'm just, I'm an author. I'm a paranormal author who's been relatively successful, with my books, certainly Sheppton and HooDoo. But but it's not that I have, any kind of immense knowledge that you or somebody else doesn't have. Yet people come up to me and tell me about seeing orbs. They tell mysterious lights. They tell me about hearing, dead family members speaking to them. And they ask me about this. And I mean, I have nothing to say because I don't know. I mean, I can't. I don't know. I mean, I believe it's happening. It does happen, and I just can't explain it. I don't know what it means.
Yep, I totally agree with you. Same thing with here. When people are coming on the show, they talk about their experiences, and you might even get that one person who is a non-believer, doesn't believe in any of it, but then he has that one story that happened to him back when he was 15 years old.
Yeah. The other thing too, I think that there may be some of us that have a sensitivity. I mean, call it what you will, like a sensitivity, maybe a power, maybe they're empaths. I'm not exactly sure, but maybe they're more in tune with things like this. That maybe there's other dimensions there, and maybe they can pick up on these things. And just Ambrose Bierce, he was sort of like a contemporary of Edgar Allan Poe. And Ambrose, they called him Bitter Bierce because he had a viper tongue. But anyway, he wrote a song called "The Damn Thing," and there was this creature that was just running havoc over the woods and everything. And here the creature was invisible. And in the damn thing, Ambrose Bierce ends it by saying, "What if there's creatures that they make sounds that say only dogs can hear, but not us, or maybe they have." They're invisible. They have a spectrum that maybe some animals or birds can see, but not us. So an invisible creature that exists, but we can't see them or hear them. But I mean, they're there. They make their presence felt. So there's been so much. I think a lot of the answers might be in literature, in science fiction, and science fiction always regurgitated science. And so I don't know, but The Damn Thing was always one of my favorite short stories. And I think it sort of explains maybe some of this. I think there's things out there that exist, but we just can't see them or hear them. So yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, I think there's quite a bit out there yet we just can't explain.
So with Coal Region HooDoo, I take a look at what happened in Sheppton, the out-of-body experiences, the near-death experiences, the afterlife experiences of certainly of Pope John the 23rd, and just a lot of the things that happened in our region that is just rich with lore. Certainly, the Smurl Haunting is the most profound and the most notorious, bigger than the Wells Haunting in Wilkes-Barre, and I don't. But so far, the book's been out for only 5 months, but we've been getting some really good reviews, and I'm just glad that there's an audience for this, and that the people in the area, are receptive to my work and my research.
Sure. And before we wrap things up, Max, if anyone's interested, where would they be able to pick up a copy?
Yeah, I'd like them to check out my website. It's www.maximfurek.com, MAXIMFUREK. If they contact me, I'd love to get them an autographed copy of any of my books, Coal Region HooDoo or Sheppton, the Sheppton mythology, and also the book Somebody Else's Dream about Timothy and the boys. But hopefully in 2 weeks we'll have the Flying Saucer Esoteric up there as well. So that'll be my 6th book. And for the listeners out there, it's called The Flying Saucer Esoteric, History's Most Amazing UFO Events. And that's being published by Beyond the Fray, and they published my Coal Region HooDoo book. So
it sounds like that's just to be in time for the Halloween season.
I think so too, and I think that it's time for a book on flying saucers, just with everything that's been happening. So
yeah, I totally agree with you. There's a lot of talk about it recently.
Yeah.
Okay, I'd like to thank you for joining us tonight.
Oh, thank you so much, and thank you for the good work that you do and for keeping the stories alive. I think this is important. So,
I believe so also.
Yep. Okay. Well, continued luck to you, and thank you so much for inviting me to be on your show.
Yep. Thanks for joining us.
Okay.
Have a good night.
Yep. Okay. Bye now.
Enjoy listening to the Creepy Side of NEPA? Check out the Creepy Side of America podcast, where we explore the darker side of the United States. along with stories behind some of America's most haunted locations. Find the Creepy Side of America wherever you listen to podcasts.
I just want everyone to remember, starting November, we will be back to our monthly episode schedule. Until next time, enjoy the Creepy Side of NEPA.
This has been the Creepy Side of NEPA. If you have a spooky story that took place in northeastern or central Pennsylvania, send it to ghost@WNEP.com for your chance to share it on an upcoming episode. We're dying to hear from you.